So there was a large gathering at the National Mall for Easter, the same place that the anti-gun protests took place the week before. And the big turnout, as well as turnouts for other services throughout the country, shows the importance of all of us celebrating the same holiday in the country and having that part of our sovereignty, part of our nationalism. And I thought of that because one of the right-wing commentators that does videos talked about how on Good Friday in Hungary everything's closed, pretty much how it used to be here for Christmas, and how it seems to be getting that way a bit again. More seems to be closed now than what there was just a few years ago. And it's because the whole country celebrates it. It's a huge tradition, and it's a big deal. So for the weekend, it's pretty much devoted to that. And just like here, it's one of the big traditional holidays. It's one of the few real big ones that pretty much it defines the country. Everybody celebrates, and at the very least, they don't object to it. And that's the key. That's even more important. And over there, since they've kept that kind of sovereignty, they don't have anyone getting offended by it or protesting or anything like that, which is different. But over here, it should be that way too. And everybody knows that we've had these holidays, about 3 or 4 real big ones, as well as other ones, for so long. And their presence isn't going to change that. And nobody should stop celebrating them because they wonder how somebody new feels about them, who knew that they were celebrated before they came here, and trying to just change the culture to be like what they came from. And that's the only reason that these holidays have been declining in celebration and observation. But it seems like maybe there's a little bit of a reboot to them, and some of the news articles I've read have given that opinion. It's just what it is, but they've said it's a little bit of a turning point, and that people are getting back, maybe because they got zapped with how far it's gotten, but they're getting back more to their traditions here, and it probably helps without the political correctness, and they feel more comfortable and say what they want and do what they want. And it showed on Easter, and that's making a comeback, just kind of like American culture in general is making a comeback. And it also shows for the Second Amendment, all those gatherings, so far they're just in state capitals, but as I've said, there's talk of having some in other cities, because some states, depending how big they are, it can take 6 to 8 hours to get to the capital. And there's so much interest. There's people that have said they've never been to one of these. It's not their thing, but they got to get out there because it's kind of like that. It pushed so far. Of the Second Amendment under threat, it kind of like it really jolted them. And that's what it takes to get people active, and that's also what it could take to get people to vote. Something big like that. People are too comfortable until something hits home. And the left controlling the cultural narrative, and doesn't really matter who's in politics, because by doing all these protests and stuff, they control the laws too, because after this shooting, there's been new gun restrictions, age restrictions, types of guns, and even some confiscation, which right then, that's where people should draw a line that never should be crossed. If someone's going to get someone's gun, they got to pay for it. And there's no way that they can do that with the Second Amendment. No one can just steal. And maybe that is what jolted people when they saw that they really are, as they always say, coming for the guns. And so it's making people get out. It's making them more interested, and more than I thought with this planned gathering. And it started by someone in a coalition. I forget what it's called, but it's real more organized than I thought. And then I read, because every time there's one of these, the few times that the right does do protests, there's always counter protests, and every time the left gathers, they always have them bust in and so forth, and all their protests turn out to be the same. I mean, people are wearing ridiculous clown gear and pink hats, and it's a mess. But so I read a few days ago that a company donated 50 to 60 buses, and that it'll bus people in even from overstate lines, like depending on where the march is, gathering is, the closest spot and such. And they have meeting places, and they're putting ads on Craigslist and word of mouth and whatnot. And you read that and you think that's just what they do all the time. But it turns out that this time it's the right doing that. And it's a gun range which has a few stores throughout different states called Straight Shooter. They're the ones that they paid for all these buses to get people in, and they're also having a big voter registration drive. So it's good to see the right taking a page out of the left's playbook, because that's what works. And so it's kind of like putting the pride aside and saying, you know, we've got to win this in a way, and they're winning, and this is how they're winning, and it's easy enough. So we have to do the same thing too. And they think that they're the only ones that can do that, but then but to see this, it's good that people are taking it that seriously and realizing that now's the time to get active in this, to do something, because I mean, we're losing rights quickly, more quickly than before, because they're doubling down and they're used to the right side not really doing all that much. And so with those things put together, it's good to see actual pushback. And like I say, maybe that's what it took. Maybe it took this tremendous overreach when they thought people were asleep to get people to actually just to wake up and, as I say, get out there and get involved and even get registered and vote. Because if it's something like that, most people are interested in that. Most people are interested in the right to carry. And this is, of course, anybody can go, but it's encouraged to have the open carry. And that's what the company told the bus people, that this is going to be open carry. So they told them that that's what they're going to be having on the buses. They say, okay. And so it's going to be a good demonstration like that. And I'm sure still counter protesters, but I haven't heard of them. And so it's a little bit of a change in that way, because there's a bit of pushback. I haven't seen this kind of thing nationwide. And the protests are at 2 Eastern, and they're at the same time throughout the country, so at 11 on the Pacific coast. And for a couple hours, people just gather and show their strength for their Second Amendment right, and also for the First. They're both under attack. And so it's good to show, I think the government's surprised that so many people see what's going on, or actually doing something. And so that's also part of the change. And then it probably helps to have a strong leader too, because people feel more safe and they feel that they can do more. They feel that he's got their back. And that's just like with this horde of illegals that are running for the border. And last week, when that first kind of broke out, when more public, people got back onto Twitter again, and those hashtags, and what was trending was called hashtag invasion and invasion of illegal aliens. And so there were a lot of tweets towards Trump, like what are we gonna do about this, and just different ones like, well, it's too bad that nothing can be done about these guys just racing towards the border. And then so after he learned about this, at first, you know, the usual about how the borders, they need to be more secure and such, and then people are like, yeah, but this is an immediate threat, so we need something more immediate. We can't wait until to vote on something or something. And then so he said that so he'll send some of the military down to the border then, and this is before the horde was even near. And then he threatened to give Mexico a worse deal with the NAFTA thing. He should get out of that anyway. And then so they agreed to break up some of the horde, which they weren't before, which just shows they're not our allies. They were going to let these guys right in because they're trying to get Trump back for deporting their people, even though they say that those are the best of them. They should want them back, but they're trying to get him back for that and for getting a more fairer deal to the U.S. for NAFTA. So they were going to let these guys right through, of course, but he called them out. And they were counting on him being so busy that he wouldn't even know about it. And then, so, yeah, he says he'll send them down. And then the next day, even better, he said that today on Wednesday that there's going to be immediate action for the border. And then people were wondering what it was. And then a few hours later, he said he's going to deploy the National Guard. And wow, I mean, what kind of action and such strength and such decisiveness so quick. You get that they're going to get there long before those hordes show up, if any of them aren't dispersed. And I mean, they're demanding to get entry here. They're just communists, and they're demanding all this collective stuff, saying that they're citizens of as much as people here. And I mean, they're getting bold because they think they can get away with it. And now they're getting this pushback where they're not even going to set foot in here because apparently the laws are strange. If you set foot in here, apparently you can't just get thrown back over. I don't know, but so he's preventing them from even getting here. And that's good for so many levels because the National Guard, it's going to really boost their morale because for the first time they're actually guarding nationally. Not internationally in some foreign country where they're not hardly sure why. But, I mean, they're going to see the results. They're protecting their own country, their own people, their own families. And I mean, when he first announced that he was going to send some military, a lot of the retired veterans, they said that they'd volunteer and go down there free of cost to protect this country. And it's like a mutual kind of understanding or respect because they see that Trump's trying, so they want to try too, and we all want to help together to make this country safer and better. So they were ready to go down, and I never heard such a thing like that. As well as bikers, they say they're always on guard if Trump ever needs some help, and it's all this cooperation, and it's not forced at all. Not like the socialism stuff. This is just they want to because they see that they're getting treated well in their country, so that they're willing to go above and beyond, and all are, just like Trump works for free about 20 hours a day, very thanklessly with all this opposition and all this kind of needless stuff, but does it all the time, doesn't stop, doesn't give up. And that's the same with the American people. They're striving to try harder. And so it was neat to see that. People getting so excited about that, volunteering to go down, and then sending in the guards. The last time I heard of a big thing with the National Guard was when Reagan was governor of California, and all the hippies, kind of like now, were starting fires and rioting, and so he called them in. And those guys are tough. They mean business. No one's going to make it over here with them. And then, to top it off, he says that he'll have them down there until the wall's built. And then I'm sure if any are needed after, whatever's needed, he'll have them down. And that's what even Roy Moore said. That's something that should have been done years ago. Send the National Guard down there. That's the best kind of barrier. That'll really deter people. Just hearing about that will deter people. If they see any videos on the National Guard in action, those are the tough guys. Those are like the seals of the land. And so just knowing they're there will deter people, and if anyone tries, they're not going to make it through. That's going to be a real solid wall of its own. And then he had already deployed them yesterday, so some are down there right now. And it just shows, I mean, these events happen so fast these days. It seems like big events, a few each week even, a few each month for sure, and they get filed away just because another one happens. So much happens so fast, and it's hard. One might not even be resolved yet, but there's about 4 more events piled on top of it, and he's got it each time. And each time when you kind of wonder, then he outdoes himself with it. And so he took care of this unexpected event with such strength, such quickness, and wow, I mean, to have a strong leader at this time, because anyone else would just let these guys in. The media wants to destroy this country, and a lot of politicians do, so they'd let them in, just like this horde. It's obviously started with Soros and the UN. They didn't even think of it on their own, and just like the refugee program, it's a bunch of young men that are about college age looking for a fight. That's what it is. That's what, just like the refugees that are destroying Europe, these are the same things, and they're trying to get back at America for Trump. And they vowed to destroy it, and they're trying. And so that was an outward invasion. I mean, when was the last time we had an invasion here in the United States? I mean, an actual invasion, not counting the slow invasion that they do inside with having all the illegal, like in California, having all the illegals stay, bring their own culture, vote people in for their own culture to make it a communist state. They did that, and they're trying to do that with the whole thing, so that's a slow invasion. But this right here, it's a dangerous, fast invasion, and people on the southern border on this side of it should feel just as safe as anybody in Maine, and the whole country needs to be protected, and he realizes that, and he's doing that. And so I think a lot of people feel safer here now because they know that he's got it. They know they don't have to worry so much. They know that he's looking out for all of us. And then in turn, we look out for him. And we pay more attention, look out for each other more. And that's a good thing. And that's what they're trying to kill, this American spirit. And by sending these hordes, that was one way to do it. They didn't think that he'd do this. They didn't expect that. And now that he's sending them down there and leaving them down there, there's no sense in them trying to send another one because they're not going to make it in this way. And the same as if any tried to come in from the sea, they'd send these guys to the coast. And I'm sure it really is making them feel better to be able to work nationally right here, to be deployed in their own country, which is what they're there for. And he's going to have rotations of them, and when he brings them back from Syria, he'll have some of those ones go down there too, that rotate and such. And that's when the parade will take place, kind of celebrating that too. But it shows that it could be a bit of a change in the tide, all this, and it helps, I say, that kind of definite leadership. I mean, that kind of that large stature that he has, and so definite, and comes out and says, we're sending the National Guard to the southern border, and that's it. You know, that means business. There's no negotiations. That's what's going to happen, and it happened. And that's the kind of leadership that people remember about, that they read about, and that used to be, and that's normal to protect it that much. So it's funny how some people are so afraid of it being that protected. They should be glad, but instead they're just so lost that they'd rather have this horde come in. And of course, if anyone came in, they'd never leave. We know that. They'd be in some sanctuary city and just stay and change the place more than they already had. And he realizes he didn't want that to happen anymore. He didn't want these illegals to take over the country anymore and to change the culture from what it is anymore. And like with Easter, with Christmas, with our major holidays, have everybody celebrate, or everybody tolerate them, at least, like actual tolerance. Like, these people talk about tolerance so much, but they don't tolerate the country that they want to be in. And so there's getting to be more of that, more kind of like something in common that we all have. The country has to have a common culture, or it's going to fall apart. And the common culture has already been established with the founders long ago. And people, I think it got kind of so bad that they sprung up. So maybe it swung the pendulum at least a little bit the other way. And it just shows whoever controls the narrative is in charge. Because the media, the stuff they report on, the slant that they give it. I mean, if somebody just saw that and didn't know about the politics and just saw the laws and the reporting, they'd think this was a communist country, because that's basically what it comes across as, what it looks like. People out marching all over the place every other weekend, wanting all this free stuff and wanting to accept all this kind of crazy stuff. And it's just the tide, once it turns, it can be reported a lot differently in the same place. And what's interesting is that those ones, as much as they're out, they're actually not the majority. They just scream the loudest, but the silent majority is really showing. And a lot of people think the biggest story of this week is sending the guards down there. A lot of people approve of that. A lot of people approve of the Constitution. There's more people than what we think that are actually on board with turning the tide again. And so that amongst all this stuff that's happening, there's some hope like that, and some good news and some good things that are happening, which helps when we all have a strong leader leading the ship once again.